Hi guys, it's Mickey from A Song of Ice and Fire Stats here, and as part of this month's Guild Drop, we're here to talk about the Baratheons. But it won't be me. No, we thought we'd ask the players out there, you guys, what you thought of the faction. So sit back, grab your hammers, and let's talk Baratheons. What's your name, and where are you from?
My name is Jason Sherry. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, in the United States.
My name is Craig. I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, in Canada.
Yeah, my name is Philippe Bertrand. I'm knowing as Titus on the French tournament. I'm from France, and just near Bordeaux, near the sea, in Biscarrosse, in fact.
My name's George. I run the YouTube channel 3 Sales Gaming and the associated Twitch channel as well. I'm from Manchester in the UK. I've been here for the last 4 years.
I'm Etienne. I'm 20 and I'm from France.
My name is Victoria. I'm from southeastern Wisconsin.
Well, I'd like to keep my name as mysterious as possible, so let's just keep it as Stannis. And I am from Spain.
Hi, I'm Dakota. I am from the United States. I live in Ohio. And then I also do the Rollemifyougottem podcast with my buddy Carl Black.
How much experience of A Song of Ice and Fire do you have?
I've been playing since the Kickstarter, but I've played about a dozen real-life tournaments, but that was mostly with Lannister. So Baratheon, this is actually my first competitive set of Baratheon games this tournament.
I started playing ASOIAF since mid-2018, so it's about 2 years ago. And I started Baratheon whenever it came out, since I was expecting them like a lot.
So I started playing the game about mid-December. I went to a tournament with a couple of my friends. My army was essentially a scrounged together force of a handful of things from each of my friends, and I got my butt kicked in the first tournament and walked away with a starter set of Lannisters, and it kind of just grew from there.
Well, basically my interest in the game started with the whole Sea Monarchs for reveal of the Baratheons. A buddy of mine was getting into the Night Watch and all that stuff, and he was like, oh, look at this stuff. And then the bottles were gorgeous. So that pretty much just grabbed me and got me.
Why do you like the Baratheons?
So I found the Baratheons interesting mostly because of the dual loyalty system. So not being able to select all the units for all the different commanders, I found that to be kind of refreshing compared to the other factions, because it's always, okay, you have this set number of units and you have these set number of commanders and attachments, and that's your pool to pick from, right? So there's a little bit more thinking in terms of list building, and you can kind of, and it's also interesting that you can bring both types. So you can bring Stannis and Renly, and in any mixture of the game modes. So that gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of kind of tailoring to a tournament.
Because of the miniatures, when they go out, I think they're very cool with the stag face and all the position.
Well, as anyone who's watched any of my videos or listened to any of the streams knows, I more than like Baratheons. I absolutely love them. I think, curiously, they were not the first faction that I considered getting hold of. Because when I first got into the game, I wasn't aware that they were there yet. When I first kind of started looking around it, I was originally trying to get hold of the Night's Watch, and then I saw the Baratheon stuff and decided that actually that was the one that I was going to go for. I love the aesthetic. The models are incredible. I love the play style. Like, I'm quite a defensive player in a lot of games that I play, whether that's kind of card games. I played a lot of Magic. Any of those kinds of games, I tend to go for the more defensive side of things. And the Baratheons obviously give you that kind of, they're really, really good armor saves. They're average and above average morale scores are what really appeal to me as well.
For like playstyle wise, I love the adaptability, because really you can bring, panic lists, you can bring healing lists, you can bring just a bunch of armor and counterplay. They can really almost slot into about anything except really, maybe like alpha striking.
Why should someone pick to play the Baratheons?
I think you definitely have to enjoy the style of play. It's like, if you want me to try and convince you, then if you just like having a mitt full of cards and just reacting to what your opponent's doing, mostly being setting up in defensive positions and playing like a grindier style of play. This is mostly from the Renly side, because I'm not super familiar with the R'hllor stuff.
I think Baratheon is very special faction because when you bought one box, you've got 2 army in fact. Because the other faction have hero 1s and heroes 2, but it's for the same army. But when you bought a Baratheon faction, you've got heroes 1 for one army and heroes 2 for the other. And I think it's very, very fun to have a build list with the 2 faction in one. That's why, in fact, 2 faction in one army. I hope I think it's the best things, in fact.
Well, the Baratheons are kind of a nice mid-level difficulty. They're not Starks, which have a very, very, very shallow learning curve, which is nothing's wrong with that. It's just Baratheons are a lot more difficult to play than something like Starks, but aren't nearly as difficult as something like the Targaryens right now. In addition, the Baratheons have, like I said, a really responsive play style. So as long as you're keeping track of where things are and kind of keep in mind the next 2-3 activations or the next 2-3 turns, they're not a difficult army to play. They do take a little while to master, but the basic idea of how to use them is pretty good for a new starting player.
Well, the first thing is you aren't playing one faction, you're actually playing 2. So if you like tremendous variety, it already offers you more than any other faction will ever offer you, just because of the whole Renly and Stannis dichotomy. So you can always play with Stannis, who is a lot more aggressive, a bit more loose, more risk management, or you can play the Usurper, which is more tanky, control, standing your ground. And both styles with the newer releases are starting to be perfectly viable and serviceable, although I personally support a mixed approach.
What is your favourite Baratheon unit?
So I've only played against the R'hllor Faithful and any R'hllor Faithful army one time. It was against my opponent. I think I was playing Lannister versus them, and I one-shotted them with a unit of Knights of Castellar Rock. So I guess that kind of put me off to playing them, even though I've seen them played very well. I've watched a couple of streams, and a high-level player. Not to say that my friend is not a high-level player, he is, but he was using it for the first time. But a high-level player, I've seen the tactics that they can utilize, and they can be very, very effective in a Baratheon army, especially when you combine them with all the different attachments and Melisandre. You can put out a ton of panic damage with a R'hllor unit specifically. I've never actually seen the R'hllor in every Twitch stream or in real life. I've never actually seen the free attack ever go off. So that also kind of put me off to using them. I know it sounds like I'm kind of bashing them, even though I said they're my favorite unit in the army, but I feel they're the most unique because of that faith mechanic.
I do have a favorite unit. I don't think it's going to be any surprise as a Renly player that my favorite units are Rose Knights. But also, like, they are just incredible, aren't they? They're just amazing. So yeah, Rose Knights are my current favorite. I think they're going to be challenged in my list of favorites by the new champions of the Stag, but I've not really had an opportunity to test them yet.
My favorite unit is the Rose Knights by far, since they don't have any weakness points. Since they are tough, they heal, and they deal a fair amount of damage. And you can buff that with some commanders and tactics and stuff. But I didn't have enough experience with the new champions, the horses, so I cannot say about them.
My favorite unit is probably their worst unit. I love the Stag Knights. The models are awesome. I think like the theoretically like how they should play is awesome, but the unit just isn't very good right now. Hoping maybe they can update it to make it a little bit better, but it just not very good. But they're definitely my favorite unit. I try to put them in every list, even though I know I'm going to lose with them.
Who is your favourite Baratheon commander?
When I had sort of decided between 3 lists for the tournament, I definitely wanted to do the Brienne Bastard Skills because I really like Renly. I think both versions are interesting. I like this healing one a little bit better and the morale boost to create a little bubble. But my favorite commander is maybe Courtney Penrose because, as I said, like he blends a lot of what like a lot of Lannister even further into it, like counterplot. You can't say no to counterplot, and his influence is really strong. The third list, like the runner-up list, was probably going to be a Davos list that I wanted to play with, which actually when I saw Davos wasn't in the tournament at all, I was disappointed, but I almost brought one because I really wanted to try him as well in the Bastards Girls, because I think he really synergizes with them, where he's able to march down the field, because I think they're most effective when you can get them past your opponent, aimed in the flanks, and then all his cards really synergize well with what the Bastards Girls are doing.
I haven't chosen my side, in fact, in this faction. I think there's two different way with this faction, two different units, because you can have a Rose Knight on the one side, and you can have Roar on the other side. And I think there's no one I prefer. But when this, I have one commander I prefer in each side. First one is when you go on first side, it's Sir Davos. He gives mobility to army when it's needed, in fact. On the other side, I like Country Panrose because he got 3 cards where I like it. Counterplot, defensive counter, and super strategy. This is 3 cards that can stop the opponent's strategy, so it's nice. I like it.
I do prefer the Renly side, mostly for Rose Knights. But in Stannis' side, I like Davos, but that's the only one I like mostly. But for Renly side, and the one I play as a commander is Loras Tyrell. I think he's a great weakness cap filler, since he has offensive cards that Rose Knights lack little. So you can make Rose Knights even more deadly. But with Loras Tyrell, you cannot feel Brienne de Boo, so it's one less of an attachment already if you take not a Renly commander. So that's a shame, but yeah.
I'll give you my favorite, and then I'll give you the one that I really, really, really wish I could justify using. So I really love Loras, because Loras is kind of that in between of all of the other commanders. He heals very well, he buffs his own unit, and he has this wonderful synergy with the just Baratheon faction as a whole. For kind of the commander I really wish I could get behind is Estermon, Eldon Estermon. I think his cards are really good. His overall playstyle really fits with what the Baratheons are trying to do. The issue is I can never justify not taking him as an NCU because it's just so good.
Okay, so I tend to go by the philosophy of if you have an event, a 2-list event, one achieves each loyalty. Simply because they can cover so many bases if you spread them out. That doesn't mean that I might not consider having both Renly or both standard lists in some more of event, but that's my initial gut reaction. As for favorite commanders, I really, really like what Davos brings to the table. I really enjoy what he brings to the table. It's just, well, you don't have any cards, right? You can't really ensure it, and sometimes the Baratheon deck can really get stuck in your hand. But I love how he can come out of nowhere. I played a friendly match where it was Clash of Kings, okay? So my Freedmen die. Oh no, boo-hoo. They come back. 3 bottom tricks. Okay, they run 10 inches forward. Move another 5 inches. Charge another 7, 8 inches. They cover 25 inches of table and charge the unit almost in the enemy's deployment zone. That's just purely magical. You can't get that with anybody except Starks. And you really feel that raw power of, oh yes, now you are the one that suffers my rage. So that was just good fun. Also, theme-wise, I love him. Of course, Stannis, I also like him thematically, although he's a bit of a harder sell. And this is more from a fun factor perspective, okay? If it's for pure cold efficiency, Core Renly with Rose Knights is fantastic, although he's pretty much straightforward and I would say a bit boring, okay? You do have to play a lot the position game, which is the most rewarding sort of play in this game. But you aren't going to do any fancy plays. You're not going to do like amazing alpha strikes where, bam, you're not going to really surprise anybody. Everybody should know what to expect when you face Ren.
Are there any new releases or buffs that you think should come to the Baratheon faction?
Okay, well, I'm not going to be very original here, and I'm going to say the Stag Knights need a slight boost. And I realize that not all the units and attachments are out, so we're probably missing some stuff that is going to boost them a little bit further. I feel the Stag Knight Nobles a little bit. It makes them a very expensive unit at 10 points, and I don't feel they punch at that level currently.
For God's sake, we need a ranged unit. We really need a ranged unit. If you'd asked me this a couple of weeks ago, I'd have said we needed to see the champion of the Stags. We needed our own cavalry, and obviously we've seen those, and they're incredible. They're very expensive. Like, I think they're basically worth every point.
There's two things. One is kind of I'm pretty sure we're going to get it, and one is just me throwing it out there, hoping it happens. I'm really hoping that in the attachment box we get a Renly loyalty attachment for cavalry. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen, but I'm expecting that's going to be the case. Mostly because I have a Lord Paramount list in my mind that would work perfect if there was a cavalry attachment for Renly. I would be surprised if we didn't get it, considering that it's already in the box. The A cavalry attachment, but anyways, the unit I'm really hoping we get sometime in the future is a Tyrell Lance Cavalry.
So the buff wise, if I could say one buff, obviously the Stag Knights need a buff. They're not very good, and I don't think it helps their starter box out with their contents in it. I feel like a lot of the 2 of the 3 units are pretty weak out of their starter box, so if they could actually buff them up to be pretty good, it'd be better. And then a new thing, I'd like to see some more like 1-point generic attachments come in. Going off the Renly side, I know he has has some tactics cards that play off of attachments, and there's just not a whole lot of flavor with the attachments out of like the named characters. And then the 2 that come in the box, there's a 2-point Stag Knight Noble, and then the Master Warden. There's just not a lot of variety yet, so some cheaper 1-point attachments would be awesome.
What would your best advice be to a new Baratheon player?
I'd probably say learn the tactics deck. That goes with all factions, but particularly with Baratheons. I tried to play a couple triggers incorrectly just because I'm so new with them, and it kind of hurt me in a couple matches, especially with defensive counter with Penrose. I forgot that it was unactivated, so then I got hit pretty bad with some Cavaliers. But yeah, a lot of their triggers are very much the same. You basically can't activate a unit, and it has to be unactivated for that to trigger. And there are a bunch of them with the same trigger, and it's kind of what everybody complains about with the Baratheon deck. And so I would just say learn the triggers and realize that you need to take the charges. You need to start the rounds engaged to get and get a bunch of cards into your hand to be able to use those across your army.
You gotta just move up the board. You gotta try to get engaged, make them engage with you, force them with it, either, especially with the objective ones, that's where it's maybe the easiest to make someone engage with you. Make them come to you and make them make the first move so you can react to it and punch them, because all your cards are about punching back and engage, and the triggers on the cards are so overlap so much that you just got to give yourself the opportunity to use them and cycle through your cards if you're not like drawing a ton of them with like Eldon and using the tactics on them and stuff, because you just want to make sure like churn through your cards and use them. Like if you can use a card, use it.
The best advice to this game, in fact, and this faction too, is you must know your deck.
Look at what other people are doing. Watch streams, watch YouTube speculation, watch watch faction overviews, whatever. Look at the stats stuff. See what other people are doing and what other people are bringing. Find what you're comfortable with, and that applies to both sides. And also know your triggers. Baratheon, we are kind of, our tactics deck is incredible. It has a lot of really good effects in it, but they all tend to duplicate. You need to know what the right card in the right situation is.
You should not take by default only one side. You should consider both sides, Stannis and Renly's, so you have more options on the gameplay you want to play. Like if you want to use Melisandre, you you completely fine doing it. But if you like, I don't know, Brienne or anything, just choose both sides.
The best thing to practice is setting up for countercharge, because that is kind of the bread and butter of the Baratheon deck. If you're not using countercharge to its fullest, you're going to really start to struggle, because it's kind of setting up that impact. Ours is the Fury, hold the line, combined with having a countercharged unit move in. Especially when you're playing Renly, you have Brienne to think about as well.
Okay, so the first thing is, if you're only going to play with the starter, because, hey, I have my starter, my friend has the starter, don't get discouraged. It's normal. We all know that Stag Knights are incredibly underwhelming. We all know that Sentinels are kind of ho-hum. And also, don't get discouraged with the deck. The deck is very janky. It's kind of unwieldy. When it works, it's absolutely savage. But when it doesn't work, you feel like you have like 5 cards in your hand and wondering what the hell is wrong with your life.
To a new Baratheon player, I would say don't get discouraged if you are losing a lot right away. So having the Baratheon since the starter box, I've lost with them quite a bit, just with the limited amount of stuff out there, and obviously more stuff is coming out now. But I do think they're a little bit of a learning curve compared to some other factions, just because it's a lot of like counter attacking. Where into like, yeah, obviously you want to charge if you can charge, but if you're like, oh, like I can probably take this charge over here and I have an Ours is the Fury or a counter charge off of it, that's gonna like play into your, play a little bit better into what you're trying to do to actually use your tactics cards and get some of your cool abilities out there.
Do you have any sayings or quotes that sum up the Baratheons?
Well, I will just say that I'm pretty disappointed in Simon, and we haven't seen any archers shooting hammers yet.
The deck is special. The thing that your faction can go on two different armies is special. The loyalty is special.
Just take them, play with them, throw hammers at people's faces. You're gonna have a good time.
Baratheon is the Warhammer of the faction you can choose from.
I like to play Andrew, and it's very much a give myself wounds, and I have a mel list where it's basically I take as many wounds as I'm dealing out. So the one thing I think of is just from the TV show Stannis, when they're about to storm it, and his captain goes, "We're going to lose hundreds of men," and he responds with thousands.
You will lose more units than you have. You will still end the game with a full army.
Stag Knights are absolute crap. Don't you dare attack me unless you expect holy retribution.
And there we have it. That was the players' take on the Baratheons. Big shout out to George from 3 Sales Gaming, and Dakota from Rollemifyougottem, and also Phillipe from Théo. All of the links to these places where they create great community content can be found below. Remember to head over to ASOIAF to submit your results. And, of course, to play us out, we're going to have Bruce sing us his song that he thinks represents Baratheons the best. Catch you next time, guys.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to